Christmas time not only draws the festive and cheery, but the murderous. Christmas crime is most noteworthy to us because of the day it takes place on. Who could be heartless on Christmas? But history shows us that this trend of holiday homicide is not a new thing. Welcome to the Crafty Cryptid, a channel dedicated to the dark, the strange, and the mysterious. If you enjoy this type of content, click subscribe and ding the notification bell. Today, we are visiting a tragedy that happened exactly 140 years ago this year. The Gibbons family and the Thomas family had been planning a wonderful Christmas. The two families lived across the street from each other, and Fanny Gibbons, age 14, and Robert Gibbons, age 17, had invited their neighbor over to spend the night. Emma Thomas, age 15, was delighted to join her friends on December 23rd of 1881. And given that Emma's mother was just across the street, and that Robert was nearly an adult, the children did not mind that Mr. and Mrs. Gibbons had left for the evening. On the morning of Christmas Eve, Mrs. Thomas got up around 4 a.m. to get started on the household chores. She looked out the window, but the lights in the Gibbons residence were all dark. She assumed the children were still sleeping. Around 6 a.m., however, she looked back over and noticed a strange flickering light in the window. It took her a moment to realize what it was, and when she did, she ran from her home, screaming. The alarm for the quickly spreading fire woke up the rest of the neighborhood, and several people burst into the Gibbons residence, knowing there were sleeping children inside. The bodies of Fanny, Robert, and Emma were pulled out. But what shocked those who had gathered was not that a fire had somehow started in the house, but that all three children had had their heads smashed in with a blunt force object. 3 physicians who arrived on the scene confirmed that the kids had been murdered with a weapon. They had not died from the fire. What was even worse was that the physicians also determined that Fanny and Emma had been abused in such a brutal way that I cannot say the R word that the physicians used on this YouTube video. ASHLAND, Kentucky was a small, close-knit town. The kind of town where people left their doors unlocked and always trusted their neighbors. This tragedy left the townspeople uneasy about their own safety and foaming at the mouth for justice. DNA evidence did not exist in the late 1800s, so investigations were rudimentary at best. The police found a bloody axe and crowbar in the wreckage of the Gibbons home and kept the children's bloody clothes for evidence. But there were no leads as to who could have committed this crime. However, that did not stop Detective J.B. Norris from accusing John Gibbons, the father of the Gibbons children. And though John was out of state at the time and could not have possibly been the perpetrator, newspapers ran with the story, as they so often do today, and soon the townsfolk became an angry mob of people looking to exact justice on an innocent man. Deputy U.S. Marshal Heflin was able to clear John's name, thankfully, before the townspeople could get a hold of him. But he also had to be the one to break the news of the children's murder to the man. While Detective Norris ran for the hills over his false accusations, people in Ashland began to talk again. When it came out that John was innocent, a man by the name of George Ellis approached Marshal Heflin with the story that he hoped sharing would get him a lesser sentence. According to Ellis, he was not the only one that brutally assaulted and murdered the children that night. A few evenings prior to the 24th, began Ellis, I met Ellis Craft, who stated that he was going to see Fanny Gibbons and take her some black candy, and that he was going to have intercourse with her, and he wanted me to come along. About midnight, the fatal night, we all started, Craft, William Neal, and myself, and when we got to the house, Craft raised the window with an old axe and stepped in first. Neal followed, and I stayed behind on the porch, and afterwards, I went in. Robbie was the first aroused and started to get up when Craft said, "You had better lie still." Craft then went to the bed where the two girls were sleeping and began to take improper liberties with them. Robbie said, "You had better stay away from there," when Craft hit him with the axe. He fell back on the lounge, then plunged forward and fell fully 6 feet from the bed under the stairs where he was found. The girls screamed when Craft jumped on the bed, and they both said, "George Craft, what are you here for?" Emma also started to jump from the bed when Neal choked her and pulled her onto the floor. She fought him, and I held her while he outraged her. Neal then struck her on the head with the big end of the crowbar, and she instantly died after throwing up her hands. Craft also had some trouble with Fanny Gibbons and called on me to come and help him. He then outraged her and killed her. Neal proposed killing the girls, and after they were dead, I took some coal oil, poured it over the bodies, and set fire to them with a match. We then left the house. This confession led to the arrest of Craft and Neal, as well as George Ellis. After a trial, Craft and Neal were sentenced to death by hanging on February 6th of 1882. George Ellis was sentenced to life in prison. However, he would be the first to die when an angry mob of people broke into the jail, kidnapped him, and dragged him off to be lynched from a tree. Craft and Neal, however, would manage to survive long past Ellis because of the appeals and new trials. Still, they would be found guilty. Craft was hung on October 12th of 1883, almost 2 full years after the atrocities he committed. He was hung from the gallows, and people lined the streets to watch his prisoner transport. Women were even said to have thrown flowers in his direction. William Neal managed to delay his execution another 2 years, but on March 28th of 1885, he finally met his justice at the gallows while maintaining his innocence. Nearly 4 years after it happened, the Gibbons and the Thomas families finally achieved justice for the brutal slaying of their children on that fateful Christmas Eve. This tragedy rocked the community of Ashland, and there is even a folk song dedicated to the victims of the massacre. I won't sing the entire thing for you, but I will leave you with just a few of the haunting lyrics. Dear father, mother, sister, come listen while I tell all about the Ashland tragedy, of which you know full well. 'Twas in the town of Ashland, all on that deadly night, a horrible crime was committed, but soon was brought to light. May law and justice be dealt out, and spread from plain to plain, and in the future day enjoy a moral land again. Now all dear fathers and mothers, a warning take by this. Stay at home with your children and guard against crimes like this. Remember, the advice I give you is from a true and loving heart. I hope you'll take its earnest heed, from its teachings never part. Remember, the world is wicked, no mortal you can trust. Trust God, who is all wisdom, and doeth all things just. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more disturbing content, and leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. Stay safe this Christmas season, everyone, and come back soon, Cryptids.